Good morning and welcome. And all those tuning into the internet, welcome as well. It's a joy to be here this morning. This reading is from The New Path by Swami Pranabananda, drawn from the chapter His Last Days. One such disciple was Sister Gyanamata, much older than he, the dignified widow of a university professor, and a person who seldom praised anybody. She yet displayed her respect for Master, so undeviating, so humble, so profound, that the worldly person visiting the ashram for the first time might have supposed her the merest neophyte. In Master's presence, I was told, she always remained standing. I was once in the main room of the Encinitas Hermitage with Sister and a few others, said Eugene, a brother disciple, when Master entered. Sister, though an old woman, stood up immediately with the rest of us. Master never glanced at her, nor did he ever say a word. Walking over the window, he gazed out at the ocean. Sister wasn't looking at him either. But after a while, I noticed that both of them were smiling quietly, a sort of inward smile. Several minutes later, Master left the room, having spoke not a word to anyone. But I had a strong feeling that he and Sister had been in silent communication with each other. I have only to hold a thought about Sister, Master told us, and the next day a letter comes from her. A number of her letters to Master and to fellow disciples about her relationship with Master appear in the book, God Alone. You know, I am always quiet when in the presence of the Master. This is not a pause intended to win his approval, nor is it altogether because I know this is to be the proper way to behave. It is because I have an inner feeling of stillness. I seem to be listening intently. So his words sink into my mind and hard to be pondered upon, sometimes for years. Because of this, I often get the answer to a mental question in his very words. Here is my answer, Sister concluded. The quick, or at least open mind, the willing hands and feet. These, brought to perfection, will be the last word, the distinguishing mark, the very perfection of discipleship. And from Whispers from Eternity, entitled, I Will Be the Naughty Baby, the Divine Mother. In the whole of life, decorated with mountains, stormy cataracts, and wild scenery, I have played long. Each time, when tired of play, I cried for thee. Thou didst drop down through the skylight of my heart's cravings, some new doll of fame, friends, or prosperity to quiet me. This time, Divine Mother, I will play the naughty baby. I will sob unceasingly. No more shall the toys of earthly pleasures stop my cries. O Divine Mother, thou must come soon, or I will awaken all creation with my cries. I will make all thy sleeping children wake and join me in the chorus of wails. Forsake thy busyness with the housework of thy creation. I demand attention. I demand thee. I no longer want thy playthings. It is said, and it's absolutely true, that the shadow glorifies the light. And as India and America share a lot of karma together in so many ways, it really seems like there's an invisible bridge that heads across to the States, and many people going back and forth and so forth. Well, during this time, a real turbulent time, here in India, one's running around seeing if they can find some 100 rupees, because all the 500,000s have, disappeared, into the ether, so to speak. And then in the United States, there's an enormous uproar around, all during this time, around the presidency, where an unprecedented number of people, half of the United States nearly, didn't even vote. What was their vote for? I would say their vote was for God, because they couldn't find, any candidates on the horizon. And of course, the vote always is best to be cast for God, no matter who is there. supposedly running the scene. And so the shadow glorifies the light. And so it's no coincidence that Jnanamata's birthday, Yogananda's most advanced woman disciple, is this upcoming Thursday, Guru Day, November 17th, where she had her Maha Samadhi. And Yogananda knew and hinted to his disciples that he would be leaving very, very soon from this world. And then when Jnanamata left, just a few months before him, she left in November of 51, he passed in March of 52. That's a scant number of months. When Jnanamata left, he again hinted that his days there were numbered. They were so very, very close. Jnanamata was so pure in her heart. In the past, if you have a chance to read the biography, any of the works of Sister Teresa of Avila, the ecstatic saint, it is well worthwhile. And that's who she was in a previous incarnation, as Yogananda talked about. And so Jnanamata, towards the end of her life, Yogananda took a look, as all great masters are able to do, at her life, and said he was not able to find one sin, not even a thought. Staggering. Absolutely staggering. Can we go half an hour with just positive thoughts, or an hour, or a day? Examined her entire life and not found one impure thought? What does that speak of? That speaks of pure consciousness. She was totally tuned in. She was a saint in a previous life, and she really only came in to help other disciples in working out their karma and so on. She was ill for 20 years. It's a long, long time. Burning up karma, undoubtedly, in her own body, so others wouldn't have to have those burdens. And so in these times, as yogis, we have really the supreme responsibility to, as Yogananda said, to be other-minded. And that does not mean to be aloof. A lot of people misunderstand yogis. They think, oh yeah, I know about you. You don't care about anything. You're indifferent. You're apathetic. That's not it. That's not detachment. Detachment's joyful. Detachment's filled with compassion. And during this time, it would behoove us to be other-minded so that we can make sure that we are doing absolutely everything we can to live in our spines, to find that joy, to find that love, to extend ourselves to others, all that we can. Because with this kind of turmoil, we don't know what will come. Yogananda made a lot of predictions and so forth, and many other great souls, even of ancient times, have talked about the hard times to come. But it's not anything really to focus on if it's going to discourage us or bring us down. That does nothing, absolutely nothing. Because this Maya, its conspiracy is to do just that, in any way that it possibly can. In life, let's face it, it's up, down, whether it's inward, our own inward experience, or the experience of what's going on here on this earth plane. Well, what does the yogi finally come to when he gets dizzy from this experience and a bit worn out? Thinks, I think instead of up, down, I think I'm just going to work on maybe being cheerful. And it's really interesting too, as yogis can be suspect of being indifferent or aloof and so on. Also, there can be suspect if you're happy. Well, if you're happy, then, you know, again, you just must be completely unaware of what's going on. How can you be happy? How can you be joyful when all hell's breaking loose? How is that possible? But the yogi knows that the contribution really that is required, especially during the possibility of hard times, is to be joyful. Because joy cracks the separation of Maya. All Maya cares to do is separate and conquer. All of the great nations, so to speak, that went around grabbing other nations, there it was. Separate and conquer. And that's what the Maya does. Yoga means union. And so that's the opposite of what is going on in this world day in and day out, where people are just in a grab fest, grabbing anything they can, whatever they can. And that's not helping them. The odd thing about greed is that we think we're gaining, but with a little introspection, we would see that we're losing. And it's very interesting, but it goes on and on and on for those who have that karma to go around and take, more than they should and so forth. They begin to shrink inside, but unfortunately, in the process, they lose touch with their own conscience. They lose touch with God. They lose touch with the saints. Whereas those that really care and they want to make a contribution, Yogananda recommended that we are world citizens. And that's why I don't think it's any coincidence for the world to see this tremendous traffic. We need to have a huge freeway back and forth between America and India. I don't know how the Indians would drive on this freeway. But nevertheless, it would be fun to see. But nevertheless, there it is. That freeway is there, invisible, of course. We find that the traffic going back and forth really fulfills a prophecy that Yogananda made, where it is the will of God, he said. It's the job now of the saints and so forth to encourage that the Americans incarnate in India and the Indians incarnate in America. When I first heard that, I thought, isn't that interesting? And Swami Kriyananda, who came to India and fell in love with India in the late 50s, early 60s, he said, sometimes when I look at some of the Indian merchants, it seems like they're really from Wall Street. And I thought, well, that's quite an observation. And so I started looking around too to see if I could see any Americans, there, peeling away the layer. And then in America, looking for Indians. And you do see that in vibration. You really do, if one looks penetratingly. And so Jnanamata, as is true of all the great saints, are beacons of light. And though she passed a long time ago, back in the 50s, still these great ones are very present for us. Very, very present, especially during these kinds of times of tremendous turmoil. Because yogis have to fight to whatever extent, bouts of depression perhaps, confusion, all of these things. We all have our karma that needs to be passed, and we do our best to, as Yogananda recommended, to meet each test pleasantly. But think of those who have no inner life. And we have our friends and relatives that really, when hard times strike, it may be health issues, it may be the turmoil that's going on presently. They find themselves in true turmoil, not knowing how to get out of it, not knowing which direction to take. And so God in His wonderful grace has planted yogis and those with an inner life, a dynamic inner life throughout the world, and you find them everywhere. And these souls are the ones, especially with the great saints, that keep this world afloat. And so though we may think, oh my gosh, now what's going to happen, and so forth and so on, it's a very good thing to practice. And it's something that Swami Kriyananda shared with us, and I've practiced it many a time. He said that when you're going through hard times, use your imagination to make it much, much worse. Much, much worse. You're having a little bit of financial issues, but now think in terms of really having financial issues where you're walking around, and you only have a few rupees in your pocket, and accept that. You're just using your imagination, accept that. And then come back to your present situation and say, well, I'm really just looking around for hundreds for the next few days until I can, either decide to beat the queues or whatever, or maybe tighten the belt and live on more rice and lentils, or whatever. Each one makes their choice. And we come back then to our present dilemma, our present challenge. It's not that big of a deal. And so that's a very good thing. So if things get, to the boiling point, in this world or in our own lives, then we can think, okay, let me go jump into a situation in my own mind that could be much, much worse. Accept it and come back to this. And we find then, awaiting us, is that joy and that thanksgiving that God has given to us so very, very much. And also during this time, it would be a very good thing, not only to, as Nyayanamanta talked about, count your blessings and skip the rest, to take a look and see how many times God, as the lifeguard, has saved us. And you will find there is not one time that He hasn't been there to throw us a lifesaver. Not one time. Sometimes it seems like God, as the lifeguard, is on the shore watching us kind of go down for the third time. We think, well, excuse me, but I know that you're going to come at the last minute, but you're really, really playing it to the very last minute and the last second. Could you jump in the water and save me, please? And of course, God always does in His own way, in His own time. And so take a look and see how God is working through your life. Remember, it's not humility to think that, oh no, God would never come to this instrument, like Swami shared when he was very anxious. This was during Yogananda's time, when he was with him in the late 40s, early 50s. He was missing Yogananda. And so word came down, this was in Mount Washington, that a water bottle was needed, a large water container was needed up in Master's room. And who could send it? Well, he thought, well, me, because then I'll have a chance to hopefully bump into the Master. So he said, I'll do it. And so he grabbed the water bottle, went upstairs, and he said he made as much noise as he possibly could, because at the time Master was dictating some letters. And so, how much noise can you make in the water bottle? And it wasn't the right place, and get some stuff out of the way, make up a few other things and so forth. But Master didn't pay any attention, and so that little trick of his didn't work. He had to leave without having, even a word with him. And so what did he think? He doesn't care about me because I'm such a bad disciple, and on and on and on he went. He got into a big black mood. And yet the solution he found, pure yoga, is he said, oh gee, this doesn't feel good. It was with him for some time. And so he thought, what should I do? And again, he was very new, but wise enough, alert enough to remember to be at the point between the eyebrows. And so he put his mind, a very strong mind of course he had, right at the point between the eyebrows for 5 minutes with tremendous power, and the mood was gone. And then he was able to reason with himself, well, Master's very busy, for goodness sakes, he's got a worldwide work. And we'll get together and talk at one point. Let me just be patient. And so, as Yogananda said, God answers all prayers, but restless ones a little. I thought, isn't that sweet? He even answers restless prayers. When we're praying to God, oh please, come to me or whatever, and we're still thinking about what's for dinner. And we think, well gee, this is kind of embarrassing. I hope no one is able to peer into my mind and see that I'm not doing a very good job. And yet God somehow answers that prayer too. Imagine then dynamic prayer, one-pointed prayer. And so this is a time in this world, as Yogananda said, little people know what radical changes can be possible through prayer. Prayer and meditation are brothers and sisters. We should spend some time putting light around this world and know that this does make a difference. It makes a huge difference. People are touched, and the need is very, very great. Because, again, yogis have a certain amount of karma and all of this and turmoil that we have to go through. But believe me, it is nothing. Hearken back to the time prior to when you were on the spiritual path. We were in a state of basically being rudderless. We had our boat, we were in the boat, but there was no rudder, there was no sail. We didn't know where we were going. We would take a clue here and a clue there and hope to find our way. But when God and the great ones came on the scene, all of a sudden it all fell into place. Just as when Swami read the autobiography of a yogi, he read it for 3 days and 3 nights, non-stop. And he said he barely ate. He was just almost floating in drinking in the vibration of that very powerful book indeed, Scripture. And so we know now that we've been given the grace to have an inner life and to be working on our sadhana and doing what we can with our seva, that bit by bit we will find that that reservoir of joy and that reservoir of love is there, and we will be able to tap into it. And so again, it's not being humble that, God will never come to me. I'm just a cold black being. That's not humility, that's just being ignorant. We want to, as children of God, demand that He come to us, hopefully this lifetime, and awaken us from this dream. And so, Jnanamata, as is true of the great saints, thank God they came, because they really didn't have to. Many of them could have just stayed in the astral worlds and enjoyed all of the blessings there. As Yogananda said, this world is a dim carbon copy. Even the most beautiful scenery is just a dim carbon copy of the astral or the heavenly regions. And yet the great ones come back because they feel the call. Why do you think Babaji was talked into Lahiri to release Kriya to this age, which he considered still a dark age? He didn't want to. He didn't want to. Babaji didn't want to because he thought, well, I give Kriya to these people and they'll just say, well, whatever, tried it once, didn't work, what's the next thing? Lahiri talked him into it. So we're in a place now where a great saint had to intercede, like Pranabananda, who went to Lahiri and said, please, the partition, the veil is so thin. Pranabananda, he was a liberated saint. But prior to this, he said, this partition, this layer is so thin between me and the Creator. Please, I know that you are one with God. Please intercede to Brahma. And Lahiri said, your meditations aren't profound enough. And so he had to go back and continue. He was meditating all night long and then going to the office. Well, again, he went to Lahiri Mahashaya, and this time he did intercede. And he was able, Pranabananda, to realize the great and burning goal of his life. And he was free. And then Lahiri later was asked again by Pranabananda. He said, I'm having a hard time getting to the office because of all this bliss. I wonder if somehow you could help me that I could get an early pension. And so then Lahiri Mahashaya had again, how we bother the saints. So then Lahiri Mahashaya again had somehow, some way, no doubt, putting into employer's mind that he was due for a pension. And Pranabananda said, what shall I say? He said, just tell him what you feel. Because Pranabananda was feeling this tremendous, awakening of Kundalini. So we just told the doctor, I'm not fit for my duties because of all of this energy that I'm feeling rising up my spine. And the doctor recommended him highly then for a pension, an early pension. And so he was overjoyed because he said, I got 2 pensions. I got my spiritual pension, which was everything, of course, and then he got his other pension so that he could then be with the disciples and be in a communion, not have to be worried about having his energy split any longer. And so Jnanamata's birthday, or I should say her Mahasamadhi, is Thursday, Guru Day. And so pause, take some time, meditate, and drink in her vibration, her presence. She was so attuned to Yogananda, such a deep, deep soul. And as Yogananda said, she would be liberated in this lifetime, and indeed she was. So we face, whatever we face in the near future, but we each test pleasantly and do what we can from this day forth to continue to be instruments for the light, because we are that. But always, as Jnanamata said, more and better. When asked what she would do, she could live her life over again, she said simply, more and better. And so that's a good mantra for us as well. God bless you.